And then she vanished, sparking a string of tips that ended up leading nowhere. For a while, the cops even looked at a Jane Doe as a possible link to her disappearance. Over the years, people claimed they saw Cara, but none of those sightings held up under scrutiny. Yet, the break in this confusing case would come from a totally unexpected place. Cara Nichols was born on May 20th, 1993. Her dad, Paul Nichols, was a businessman, while her mom, Julia Nichols, kept her job out of the spotlight. Although there's no official paper trail, it looks like Cara was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. She had a big brother named Terrence, who went by Terry, and a little sister whose name stays private. Cara was the middle child, and her folks saw her as the heart of the family. But that wasn't the only reason people loved her. She had this unique charm and vibe that made people just love being around her. So Cara was outgoing, full of life, and super creative. She had a magnetic, sweet nature that made her impossible not to like. Even her teachers had a soft spot for her. One teacher felt lucky to have had her in class, seeing Cara's huge potential early on. Growing up, Cara was a happy kid, but her teen years brought trouble. At 13, she got caught shoplifting and had to do community service. And in her sophomore year, she fought severe depression after the family dog died. Even though her parents tried to get her into counseling, Cara pushed back and refused to take meds. Nobody knows exactly what caused her pain, whether it was a lack of professional help or some secret trauma. During this rough time, she started using illegal stuff, eventually moving on to hard drugs like heroin. This just made things messier. She started high school in Colorado Springs, living with her brother Terry. Because of her addiction issues, she moved to an alternative school where she could graduate on her own schedule. Since she was a kid, Cara was obsessed with the fashion world, especially modeling and makeup. After high school, she was dead set on chasing her dreams despite her ongoing drug battle. Before she turned 19, Cara was waiting tables while trying to model, mostly posing for lingerie shoots. She also thought about going to cosmetology school to take her passion further. With no connections in the industry, Cara put her portfolio up on a social networking site for photographers and talent. On her profile, Cara said she was responsible and passionate about the work. Even though she was new, she took it seriously. Her mom, Julia, said modeling was like an escape for Cara, almost like she could become someone else while she was doing it. In 2012, near her 19th birthday, Cara hit a snag. Her drug use made her quit the waitress job. Losing her main income that summer, she went back to her family home in Chicago, Illinois. Back with her parents, they convinced her to get help, so she went to rehab to deal with her addiction. But it didn't last long. She got kicked out for breaking the program's rules. In August 2012, 19-year-old Cara decided to move back out to Colorado Springs. She made friends with local girls and stayed in close touch with her older brother, Terry. On October 9th, 2012, at 11:45 at night, Terry got a call from Cara. She said she was driving to Denver for a modeling job. That was the last time anyone heard from her. After that call, she was gone. 2 days later, on October 11th, after failing to reach her, Terry went to her room to check on her. It was weird since he hadn't heard from her in a while. Cara's roommates, Jeremy Swopey and Archie Escobedo, told Terry that she left for Denver the night of October 9th. And later, her parents, Paul and Julia, flew to Colorado to search. They found her makeup kit, phone charger, and $300 cash in her room. This was alarming since those things were vital to Cara, hinting she might be in trouble. But the family didn't report her missing until October 14th. Paul told the sheriff's office about Cara's drug past and her recent rehab stint. Paul said the police didn't take it seriously at all. They barely lifted a finger to get the story on the news, brushing off the family's panic by claiming Cara was a grown woman who didn't have to report her every move. By December 2012, detectives stumbled upon a snapshot of Cara posted on a platform known for adult entertainment and escort bookings. A tip came in from an unnamed source, insisting they had spotted her wandering around Las Vegas. But after digging deep into the digital trail, police determined Cara had nothing to do with that specific listing. someone else had stolen her image. For months after she vanished, the case barely moved an inch as the investigation dragged on at a painful crawl. Everything shifted gears, though, once Detective Tammy Tadlock assumed command of the file on February 4th, 2013. By that time, 2 other aspiring models had vanished into thin air, both having hunted for gigs on the exact same platform where Kara hosted her portfolio. The head of the National Coalition Against Violence and Exploitation of Women linked that specific domain to no fewer than 13 cases of missing young women. In response, the website released a formal declaration flatly rejecting any blame or liability. They insisted their main goal was safeguarding new talent and teaching them to recognize deceptive schemes. That same year, Detective Tammy unearthed the listing for adult services posted on October 9th, 2012, showing Kara posing in lingerie. This breakthrough opened up fresh avenues of inquiry, exposing the fact that Kara's side hustle as an escort was a secret shared with only a tiny circle of friends. A confidential source from that inner circle had first crossed paths with Kara at a gathering about 12 months prior. She explained that they connected over their shared battles with chemical dependency, cementing their friendship during a stint in rehab in 2012. According to this confidant, Kara rarely stayed completely clean, typically relying on microdoses of heroin just to keep the sickness at bay. It was the only way she could manage to get out of bed and face the day. She also confessed to tagging along on Kara's dates, confirming that every dollar made from those meetups went straight into feeding her habit. With the investigation heating up again, the phone line started ringing, with citizens offering up possible clues. A specific tip urged police to look toward Long Island, New York, yet investigators turned up zero proof she had ever been there or tied to a trafficking ring. It was on May 7th, 2013, that detectives finally gained full access to Kara's mobile history. Detective Tammy's team dialed one of the final numbers logged before Kara vanished and left a message. Within 24 hours, a man named Joel Hollendorfer, born November 19th, 1975, called them back. His rap sheet stretched all the way back to the 90s, listing him as an only child with convictions for larceny, traffic violations, and harassment. Standing 6 feet even and weighing in at 194 pounds, Joel was previously married to a woman named Christina. The couple shared 2 kids, but the relationship crumbled under the weight of his substance abuse and his habit of paying for sex. While the call logs drew a straight line between Joel and Kara's vanishing, the story he spun for Detective Tammy only muddied the waters. He admitted the number was his back in 2012 and recalled chatting that night with a young woman who went by a fake name. According to him, they spent hours exchanging messages and talking on the phone. He insisted they never picked a spot to meet, so he never saw her face to face, though police later verified Kara used the exact alias he described. Detective Tammy pulled on that thread and found Joel's registered address was a house belonging to his parents, John and Betty. Volunteers stepped up to crunch the phone data, bringing experience as a former reserve officer in Santa Clara, California, and a security program manager. He had also received specialized training in land navigation from a major American corporation focused on aerospace and defense sectors. That specific skill set was something he put to good use during his time in the military. Leveraging that tactical expertise, along with raw geolocation logs provided by the carrier, he plotted Kara's exact path, starting October 9th and running through the following morning, right before her signal went dead. The digital footprints pinned Kara at the crossroads of Goodman Road and Black Forest Road right around the stroke of midnight. While that route was way out of the ordinary for Kara, it was a road Joel drove constantly since it led straight to his place. Around the same time, Detective Tammy learned that Kara had been hanging out in a room with 2 brunette women on the day she went missing. Investigators managed to track down one of those women in Colorado Springs by November 2013. She worked with detectives to fill in the blanks regarding October 9th, up until the moment the group split up. The second woman, however, had supposedly stayed with Kara for a much longer stretch that day. Unfortunately, law enforcement in Colorado hit a wall and could never locate her. Even though Detective Tammy made real headway mapping out Kara's final hours, she was abruptly pulled off as the lead on the case. The investigator who took her place was skeptical about the supposed modeling gig in Denver, but couldn't find hard proof to confirm or debunk it. Tips regarding where Kara might be kept trickling in, but they all led nowhere, and many seemed like deliberate fakes meant to throw police off the trail. To make matters worse, fresh ads featuring Kara's pictures popped up on the escort site, some appearing months after she had vanished into thin air. Detectives dug into the digital trail and confirmed that Kara had absolutely nothing to do with those zombie listings. Investigators spent months hitting the road, traveling to different cities and states across the country to chase down leads, but they kept coming up empty. Detective Tammy finally caught a lucky break on October 2nd, 2014, more than a full year after she first got in touch with Joel. Police secured a warrant to toss his parents' land, and 13 days later, they brought in ground-penetrating radar that flagged a few suspicious patches of dirt. Betty, Joel's mom, walked the officers through the property, pointing out the specific spots where they had buried family horses and pets since buying the place back in the mid-1980s. The team didn't dig up those animal graves, but Betty tipped them off about another piece of land Joel had access to over on Green Acres Road. She got a hold of the owners, and they gave the authorities the green light to search the premises. That operation went down on October 21st and 22nd, 2014, with handlers stationing 4 bloodhounds at the corners of the lot. The second they let the dogs off their leashes, every single one of them made a beeline for the exact same location. A patch of earth that looked recently churned up, about the size of a grave, though they didn't find any human remains there. While the team was scouring Green Acres, detectives pulled Joel in for a sit-down interview. On the tape, he admitted to chatting with Kara in October 2012, but his story started to wobble. He claimed they planned to meet at Waffle House, but she never showed. He also spilled that his habit of seeing pros and his struggle with addiction were the real reasons his marriage to Christina fell apart. The lead detective, watching Joel's body language like a hawk, laid her cards on the table and told him they had tracked Kara's movements that night by pinging her phone. Joel sat up a little straighter when she revealed that Kara's last known location was only a minute away from his parents' driveway. He tried to spin it, suggesting Kara might have tailed him home to rob him while sticking to his guns that they never actually met face to face. With Joel stonewalling them and no hard evidence to make a charge stick, the investigation hit a wall and went cold for years. The dam finally broke in 2022 when Colorado Springs cops tracked down Christina Hollendorfer in Virginia. Even though she'd been tight-lipped back in the day, but once she sat down in a room with the FBI, Christina dropped a bombshell. She said after her father-in-law died in 2014, Joel confessed to accidentally choking a working girl to death during sex. According to her, Joel admitted the body was buried at his folks' ranch, right on top of a dead horse. Later on, in a phone interview, Christina said she was convinced that Joel's parents, John and Betty, knew exactly what their son had done to Kara and were helping him cover his tracks. A statement that finally led to Joel getting cuffed. Once he was in custody, investigators showed him aerial shots of the family property and asked him to point out where the pets were buried. When they asked about one specific spot, Joel swore nothing was there. But a week later, Betty inadvertently tripped him up, identifying that very same patch of dirt as the grave of Milo, her absolute favorite horse, prompting authorities to scramble the jets and solve the mystery of Kara's disappearance once and for all. A crew of volunteers and FBI agents descended on the property, zeroing in on the spot where the horse was supposed to be resting. They didn't have to dig deep. Less than 3 feet down, they hit human remains, which they carefully exhumed and rushed to the lab. It didn't take long to confirm the grim truth. The remains belonged to Kara. The autopsy showed serious damage to her brain, liver, and muscle tissue, pointing toward a potential heroin overdose. But because the body had been in the ground so long, the medical examiner couldn't say for sure what actually killed her. So authorities leaned on Christina's earlier statement to close the file, charging Joel with second-degree murder and tampering with physical evidence. The judge set his bail at a staggering $1 million plus. At a prelim hearing on November 27th, 2022, his lawyer tried to paint it as a tragic accident during a drug-fueled hookup, claiming Joel only hid the body because he panicked, not because he ever intended to hurt her. The prosecution wasn't buying it, noting that Kara had finished her stash hours before meeting Joel, so an overdose didn't really add up. They argued it was nothing short of intentional, cold-blooded murder. The judge decided there was enough evidence to go to trial and ordered Joel to stay behind bars without bail. The arraignment kept getting pushed back, thanks to the defense dragging their feet, trying to buy Joel as much time as possible before the trial. When the lawyers finally met in January, the defense attorney stayed tight-lipped and refused to make a statement. It wasn't until a month later that she officially entered a not guilty plea on Joel's behalf. They filed a formal motion to kick off the proceedings on June 12th, 2023. Back in May, amid talks about picking jurors and press access, the defense fought against streaming the case live. Their main point was that it might bias the proceedings, and they also tried getting the tampering count thrown out. Pointing to how many years had passed, they made their case. But the trial ultimately opened on June 10th, 2023. More than 10 years since she vanished, the state opened with a powerful visual of Kara in her cap and gown. Showing grim pictures of the trash bags holding her body next, the attorney zeroed in on what the defendant did. He asked jurors to look past the victim's choices, while the defense counsel admitted his client played a role in her passing. Yet he insisted it wasn't intentional. And consistent with previous claims, 14 people took the stand. The list ranged from her housemates and relatives to an old flame and men who had hired her for companionship. Every single one swore they never actually saw her, and Detective Tammy later gave a thorough breakdown of her casework. Next up was Joel's former spouse, Christina, who went into the nitty-gritty details of their time together on the stand. She focused heavily on an admission he made in 2014, painting a picture of a very rocky union. It was full of breakups and makeups until they split for good in 2012, only to reconnect a couple years later. Following the unexpected death of his dad, he drove her out to a filling station right by his family's land. That's where he came clean about ending Kara's life, adding that he had already told his old man about it. He figured his dad deserved the truth, since the police had been swarming all over their grounds. He was also convinced the stress of that secret triggered the heart failure that actually killed his father. Doubting whether he was telling the truth, she kept her mouth shut about it for almost 10 whole years. Police finally reached out to her, and then the medical examiner offered some key insights from the postmortem. He pointed out the significant amount of narcotics in her blood, but argued that an overdose probably didn't kill her. Given her history with substances, he figured her tolerance was too high for that specific dose to be lethal. Still, he admitted that being under the influence might have made it harder for her to get enough air. He didn't completely rule out the alternative explanation, preferring to stay right in the middle on that point. That gave both attorneys something to work with, and the tapes from Joel's initial interrogation were also huge. That chat happened with Tammy back in 2014, and after recess, the state brought in specialists. These were the crime scene pros who helped scour the land where the victims' remains were eventually discovered. Among them were geology volunteers, describing how they used high-tech gear that year to look for bodies. They mentioned finding some odd signals in the ground, but they couldn't say for sure if it was a person. Wrapping up, the state theorized that the defendant was seething with rage after being rejected by his ex. He went looking to pay for some company, and they claimed his temper boiled over while they were together. That anger drove him to choke the life out of her, and near the end, the state presented phone records showing he tried phoning his former partner over and over the same day he linked up with the victim. The attorney attacked the idea that he was just panicking after she died from the drugs. He claimed it looked a lot more like murder, while the other side conceded their client made mistakes. Yet they insisted there was zero solid proof he planned it, basing their finale on that missing link. They fought the idea that it wasn't an accident, and after 12 days, the jury talked for almost 5 hours. They convicted him on the lesser charge of manslaughter, which meant way less jail time, and Julia took the stand. Kara's mom gave an emotional statement reflecting how stunned and let down the whole family felt by the ruling. Believing the jurors missed how bad the offense really was, the judge had to work within their findings. He pointed out that past crimes would count against him, likely adding more years to his stay behind bars. On the last day of August 2023, the judge handed down a 24-year term. Her circle was devastated by the outcome, believing the attorneys had wrongfully put the fault on her. They promised to show up whenever he's up for release to make sure he stays locked up for the whole stretch. Julia felt 24 years was a slap on the wrist, considering the horror and how long he concealed the truth. Her relatives also slammed the press for how they depicted the victim throughout the coverage. Critics argued that instead of honoring the lively and gentle soul she was, The media unfairly painted her as nothing more than an addict working the streets. They insisted that how she made a living gave no one the right to take her life or hide her remains, leaving her family in absolute agony. If you found this investigation compelling, please take a moment to hit that like button and make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We bring you fresh true crime stories every single night. Until we meet again, keep your eyes open and watch your back. Kara Nichols faced her own set of hurdles, messing with drugs back in high school and fighting addiction well into her adult years. She started escorting at 17, but never gave up on her goals and chased a modeling career as she got older. On October 9th, Kara told her housemates she was headed to Denver for a modeling gig.